Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today for this webinar. We're really pleased to have an opportunity to speak with you about some work that we have been doing in the Department of Theater, Film, and Media Arts. I am joined here today by some of the graduate students I have been working with on the project that we're going to talk a little bit about today. And I just wanted to quickly take a moment and let them introduce themselves. So if they could jump in turn, that would be great. Go ahead, guys.
Hi there, I'm Sean Naughton, and I'm an MFA acting candidate in my third year.
Hello, my name is Lillian Brown. I'm also a third-year acting candidate in my third year.
Hi, I'm Kylie Logan, and I'm the same, a third year.
I am Jacob Athiel, and if you can sense a pattern, I'm a third-year MFA candidate.
So thanks everybody there. As you heard, they are all graduate acting students, candidates for the Master of Fine Arts in Acting in their final year of the program. Today we're going to talk about three things. We'll try to cover three things. We're going to tell you a little bit about the specific project that we have been working on. We're going to talk about how that project has been affected by COVID-19. And we're going to try to also talk about how theater and art making in general have been impacted by COVID-19. First, a bit about our project. Our project is called No Answers, a pandemic art project. Every 3 years, our graduate acting students create a new piece of theater from scratch. And we call this act of making theater from scratch devising. They devise this original work with the supervision of a faculty member, in this case, me. And the thing to tell you about devising is that unlike more traditional models of theater making, there is no predetermined playwright or director with this project. The students take on and share the playwriting and the directing responsibilities, and of course the performing responsibilities, being actors in a training program. So as the project develops, they share those roles depending on what the project needs. So it's an experiment in collaboration, an experiment in teamwork, and it's certainly an experiment in democracy and shared governance. It's also a way of working, devising that provides great creative flexibility. Should there be, say, bumps in the road, which I think we would all have to agree there have been a few of this year, 2020. Finally, and most critically, this project is created in partnership with a community organization that is deeply engaged with the issue we have decided to investigate. In this case, the opioid epidemic in Ohio. Students spend time in the field with the organization during the spring semester. That was last spring for us. And then they develop and present their final performance in the following fall semester, which is the semester we're in now. In a normal year, we would be actually closing the show in the theater right about now. Our presentation today is about how in so many ways we have not been able to do that, but how at the same time we have found meaning in pivoting to what is possible, not to mention renewed urgency in our topic itself, since COVID-19, it turns out, has only amplified challenges faced by those grappling with opioids abuse disorder. I want to turn this over now substantially to my students, since they are, I think, the real creative masterminds behind this piece that we're going to tell you about. And as I do, I thought we could start first by simply saying a little bit more about the challenges that we theater makers are facing making theater. These aren't just things we're up against, of course, but these are things that artists anywhere are up against right now. In the city you're in, the town you're in, we are facing the same things everyone is around trying to make theater. Indeed, many of the fundamental ingredients of theater are also, unfortunately, rather problematic and difficult when it comes to being safe in a world facing COVID-19. So I'd like to hand it over first to Lillian Brown to talk a little more about this.
Sure, thank you, Tom. So physical distancing does bring a lot of challenges when we're thinking about making theater. As an actor, we're really trained to work with each other in real space and real time. And I think that's what makes theater so special, is that it's happening in the present moment as if it's happening for the first time. It also makes theater so exciting because if you've ever been to a play and then like maybe someone drops a prop or something unexpected happens, you know, it's just like you have to deal with what is existing in the present moment. I remember in my first year, we took an acting class where we had to do this exercise called 2 People in an Empty Space. And this whole exercise was basically just like getting you comfortable being watched in an audience, but just reacting with one other actor in a space, no props, no dialogue, just like being present in the moment without generating anything. And so with social distancing because of COVID, all of that is really taken away from us. We were only allowed to be in a space for 1 hour. So it means that we can't really rehearse and do a lot of the things that we do as theater artists. Was really compromised because of the physical distancing with COVID.
Yeah, and I'll add to that we also train in this program to be verbally precise and communicative, and masks really change everything. So the question becomes how do we communicate with half of our faces behind a mask? Not only how are we heard, but how do we affect each other? Other parts of our training are opening ourselves up to being moved by someone's face, being moved by the slight way they roll an R or say something. And it's really hard to be affected by someone when you can only see this much of their face. So while some of us incorporated masks into our project and some of us didn't, it really came down to, okay, what do the eyes mean and what does the rest of the body mean when you're performing? It's like a new mode of performance now.
I would add that, you know, working online and through Zoom, I'm sure everybody here today is more and more familiar with Zoom every day and its capabilities, and it's really a useful tool for conveying ideas, but it's not the same as sharing space with the other actors that you're collaborating with, or indeed an audience that you're communicating with. You know, these ideas can be worked on, and a lot of our work was collaborated on over this virtual platform during the creation process. But you know, it unfortunately doesn't have the same capabilities of conveying energy or embodiment while you're working on those ideas.
Yeah, so when we get together, we had to severely restrict our time. And it's really challenging when it comes to rehearsing an ordinary piece, like if we were to do Shakespeare, but in something like this, where we were creating a brand new work, it's a completely different barrel. We needed more time to work on these things. And that was time that we understandably, for health reasons, were not allowed. The other thing is also your creativity drops. So there's something about this sitting in front of this little camera over here that ends up bombing a bunch of ideas by around 7 p.m. And so about an hour into rehearsal, the most creative ideas end up starting to plateau, where we were used to being in rehearsal until about 10:30 at night. So the time was cut short, but also within that, how much we could do within our time was really short-circuited.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's like so many of the things you take for granted in making theater and in how what the theater experience is are just endangered in this moment right now, as we try to work safely with COVID. You know, and yet I think that we have sort of been struck, all of us, by moments of creativity that people have achieved in spite of these limitations that we're up against. And I wonder if you all might be up for sharing something that has struck you either here in our community or beyond.
Yeah, I can jump in on that, Tom. There was a few weeks ago, at the end of October, the MFA dance, or the dance department, and the MFAs in that department put on a full moon walking tour over in the Arboretum area of campus, where it was a physically distanced but still like in person performance, where you know, small groups of people with assigned times would gather, and they had a thing where like as you go through a museum and you have headphones in, you walked around the lake over there, and at individual spots there were like solo dance performances. And it's very different than the way that we approached the challenges of this pandemic, and creating art and performance during this pandemic. But I think it was really inspiring to all of us that went to see it.
Totally. I would add also, my fellow actors, we are all a part of a student organization. It's called the Cohort Theater Company. And over the summer, we were really inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement to give back to our community. And so we created a summer workshop where it was a pay what you can workshop, where we invited our friends, family, and peers to, over Zoom, take classes and workshops with us. I believe Kylie taught a playwriting workshop. Jake taught like a professional actor, what it's like to be an actor's equity and the rules and guidelines that go along with that. Sean did a Shakespeare workshop. I did some voiceover things, talked about audiobooks. And all of the money that we got, we gave to BQIC, which is a grassroots organization here in Columbus that helps BIPOC queer people live healthy and safe lives, which is really great, a really great opportunity. And I'm really proud that we were able to do that.
In addition to that, we also had these pieces that we'd made in class. So we make a bunch of different pieces in class. And two of our friends, our cohort members, Aaron Parsons and Connor Graham, worked together and came up with this piece called Here We Go, which is this mime and Foley piece. And it got picked up by different festivals. There was a festival in Boulder, Colorado, that really wanted their work. And they were planning on taking it there, and then COVID happened. And so they had the idea of filming it and making it into a small film. And they brought me on board to be on camera. They brought Jess Hughes on board, who was another member of our cohort, to direct it. And we made a small film. And right while we were in the middle of it was when the COVID numbers started to climb, especially in Columbus. So we had to figure out what to do. And we adapted. We started wearing masks all the time. We made sure to open all the windows immediately after Jess said cut. We used this new lens that I got that made sure that you could be about 20, 30 feet away from somebody and still catch their face. This was a process of something that started as a theatrical piece, which was in the room, and then adapted to be something on film, which we would have only done because of COVID. And all of the money that we made on that was donated to the Ochre Project, which is this incredible project that's supporting Black trans youth.
Yeah, and one of the things that the cohort watched that inspired me the most, that utilized Zoom, is called The Line. If you don't know what it is, you absolutely should look it up. It really inspired me. It was made by the Public Theater in New York. Essentially what it was is they gathered a bunch of well-known actors, and they had them play frontline healthcare workers, and it was a verbatim piece. So they took actual words from these healthcare workers, made them into monologues, and then asked these actors to perform them, but the actors performed them over Zoom in their house, just like we're talking to you right now. And it was profoundly intimate and very moving. Perhaps one of the most moving pieces of theater I've seen in a while, actually, and I really do mean that. So it was quite inspiring to see. Zoom theater gets a bad rep. It's not the most exciting thing sometimes, but this really worked. And we saw well-known actors pretty much using the same medium that we're working with. There's a bit of a leveling of the playing field that was going on at the beginning of this pandemic, and that's kind of exciting too. Yeah.
I think what really strikes me about everything you all are talking about is just this idea of actually these projects finding themselves in kind of new artistic territory, places where artists wouldn't necessarily find themselves. I mean, perhaps the MFA dancers, most likely the MFA dancers in an ordinary world wouldn't be creating these pieces outdoors as they did, you know, and yet there was this kind of collision of choreography in the natural world that was sort of really stunning and beautiful and absolutely art. And perhaps, you know, Kylie, this example with the line, you know, the way in which somebody's ordinary own house can kind of create this intimate space that is actually hard for us sometimes in the theater to design and make, and that just kind of is possible like this. So, you know, it strikes me that this, in a kind of accepting and embracing these limitations, there was a sort of spark of creativity and new possibilities. And I guess if there's kind of one umbrella theme over this entire presentation today, I think that that's probably it. And it's a theme that's run through our project as well, you know, that limitations provide an opportunity to innovate. And that is, we've tried to let that guide us throughout this. And so we'd like to move into now talking a little bit more specifically about our particular project and how we have confronted some of these challenges and acted upon them. So Lillian, you were going to start with just telling us a little bit about first what the opioid epidemic looks like in Ohio right now.
Sure, yeah. So I have some statistics that I would like to share with you all. At the beginning of the last fall semester, I believe, yes, last autumn. Wow, like time flies really fast. So at the beginning of last autumn, we started our researching on the Ohio opioid epidemic. And I, coming into this, didn't really know a lot. So I just got some statistics together that I'd like to share with you all. The United States makes up approximately like 4 to 5% of the world's population, but it actually consumes 80% of the world's opioid supply, which I just thought was so crazy. And according to this Rimbert study, which is actually written by OSU people, which is awesome, there's an estimated 92,000 to 170,000 Ohioans abusing or dependent on opioids. This is in 2015. And shockingly, the state of Ohio ranks 3rd in the nation for overdose-related deaths, and it leads the country in overdose deaths per capita, which is really shocking and really striking when I learned this. We're really at the center of this epidemic here in the country in Ohio. This past May was actually the deadliest month ever in Ohio. 532 overdose deaths were reported. And this data is actually still incomplete because the county coroners have up to 6 months to investigate. So those numbers could change a little bit over time. But 532, that's the number for right now. And a lot of factors play into the reasons why people get addicted. I know that was a big question that I had coming into this, like why and like how does this happen and why are these numbers so large? I'm just going to focus on 2 of these factors, even though there's a lot of them. 2 major factors are education and also prescription. Another quote here from this Rimbert study is, those who have a high school degree have overdose death rates over 4.5 times higher than those with just some college. And when compared to those with a bachelor's degree, those with just a high school degree have overdose death rates 14 times larger. So education is really a big factor in this epidemic. The second is the prescription. There's a positive relationship suggesting that counties that have a higher opioid prescriptions per capita, those counties where they prescribe more, also experienced higher opioid overdose rates. In our research, we got to go to Maryhaven, which is a treatment facility here in Ohio. We met Steve, who's a registered nurse, who's really great. And we have an interview with him. If you want to watch it later, you'll get a link later. But so I'm quoting Steve right now. He says, when you think of 80% of all people that are addicted to substances like heroin, just using that for an example, they got there through the mismanagement of pain medication. And when he's saying mismanagement, he actually means mismanagement of how they're prescribed. A lot of doctors, not all doctors, but some doctors, when they're trained to diagnose the patient's pain. And that's also how they know if they're doing a good job. If you can like relieve the patient of their pain, then it's like thumbs up. That's like oversimplifying it a little bit, but like just to explain this. And so opioids were prescribed a lot, and people aren't always given the knowledge, knowing that they just take their prescription and they don't know how addictive these substances can be sometimes. Yeah, but there is treatment. And unfortunately in Ohio, there's a lot of disparities in how people can be treated for opioid use disorder. Most of the treatment centers are located in urban areas, but there's only a couple of centers located in non-metro areas, such as like Jackson, Ohio, Athens, Ohio. And given that when people are taking such like methadone or Suboxone, which are some treatments that you can use to help combat opioid substance disorder, it's just really not accessible for a lot of people. So if you don't live in like a major city, it can become very difficult. So that, I know that was like probably a lot, but that's just like a little background on the epidemic here in Ohio.
No, thank you, Lillian, for all of that, because all of that is really important and really reflects sort of where we launched with the project, right? Which was trying to immerse ourselves in the facts and information around the situation. And there is a lot of information. But I really appreciate what you're pulling out there, especially around some of the inequities in terms of access to treatment. what we learn is that not everybody has the same opportunity to gain treatment as everyone else. Kylie, you were going to speak to us a little bit about our particular community partner, right?
Yeah. So all of the research that Lillian just shared with you, that was really step one for us. And we did really learn most of those things last year. We as a cohort have varying relationships and understandings to this disease. So it was only right to develop a relationship with people who have experienced addiction to opioids, or maybe they're in the midst of it, maybe they're recovering, maybe they're working now to help others. So step two for us was to connect with Maryhaven. So Maryhaven is this provider of behavioral health services that's here in Central Ohio, and it specializes particularly in addiction recovery. And although it provides several services in a bunch of different branches, we worked most closely with its Addiction Stabilization Center, which is on South High Street, close to us. So generally speaking, people would arrive to the center in varying levels of distress. Their addiction might have reached a point where they or a family member or a friend feels like treatment is essential at this point. They could also have come to Maryhaven right after an overdose, as long as they are medically stable enough to be there. What we did was we split our cohort, 9 of us, up into 2 groups. And within those groups, we visited the group meetings at Maryhaven periodically. So we fostered relationships with the staff and the community there, the patients there. Most important is we had one-on-one conversations about the community members' experiences with addiction, with inequities, with recovery, and we asked them perhaps the biggest question, which was, if you had a microphone yourself and people were actually listening to you, what would you say? And their answers really influenced the kinds of stories we wanted to tell, because that was our whole goal in the first place, to sort of serve as a microphone. It was really an honor to work with them. A lot of us developed really beautiful relationships and had wonderful conversations with the people there. And we have ongoing relationships with the staff. It was just important to us that their voices are symbolically represented in the pieces, symbolically and literally, that we create, so they could be heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and at some point, all that field work and all those extraordinary statistics and all the preparation work that we put into this has to coalesce around some kind of art form, around some kind of storytelling, around theater. And we went through a couple different iterations of what we were going to do, just because of the changing state of the world in the last year. I mean, all of this work that Kylie and Lillian so eloquently spoke to started almost just about a year ago now. And so when we started thinking about how to turn all this research and field work into a piece of theater, anything was really possible. And it was going to be very, but the thought was this was going to be in a theater, in front of audiences, inside of the Drake. This is in a pre-COVID-19 world. And so everything's possible. And we went about a process of pulling that together and dividing up responsibilities in order to do that, and collaborating with designers, et cetera. And then just before spring break, in the middle of our process, last spring, obviously, Ohio State, shut down in-person classes, and the COVID-19 epidemic was really kicking off in earnest here. And so we pivoted to a mindset that was more COVID friendly, with the idea that at some point, like Tom said, like we were supposed to probably be wrapping up a performance of it just about right now. We were still operating under the mindset that maybe we would be able to be in person and have a performance in person with some advanced kind of safety guidelines in place, like socially distanced living room scenes, and everybody's wearing masks, or we're all just carrying sanitizer around for ourselves, perhaps. I don't know what we were thinking, but it seems like a long time ago. And obviously that started to change too. And that was also when we were collaborating a lot in this online format over Zoom, trying to bat around ideas of what's possible. And that's really, kind of the exciting thing about the flexibility of theater is we always get to ask what's possible. And when limitations present themselves, Tom, I think you said something about this, that it's an opportunity to pivot into a more creative way, or pivot toward technologies, or ways of working and storytelling that maybe we are unfamiliar with. And we did, in the sense that we changed how we were going to work, and we decided we were going to put these stories on film and online, the best ways that we could devise in the moment.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. Right. So I think at this point, probably everyone is kind of wondering, so what is it? So what have we made? And Sean is alluding to it there, that this kind of film or video based sort of product that we've landed on. And I think, Clara, this would be a good opportunity to start showing some slides here. So we're just going to work through some slides, and Clara, you can just take 5 or 10 seconds or something on each one. These are just pictures of the process of making what we've made here, as well as some images from the actual film pieces themselves. And so what we've landed on is a structure where every actor in the ensemble has created his or her own short film that somehow responds to the opioid epidemic in Ohio in some way. I think we chose that structure in part because film felt like a way for us to work outdoors, and when working indoors, a way to work indoors safely. It felt like a way in which we could maintain distance, but still with the camera create that intimacy and closeness that we crave in theater. And I think that we settled on this structure of several different smaller pieces as opposed to one big piece, because I think we realized that this is just a huge, huge story, and that trying to tell all of it at a moment when things are so wild in the world would perhaps be misguided, and that we might actually stand a better chance of saying something meaningful and authentic if we tried to speak in smaller terms. And so we devoted basically about a week or so of each a week this semester to a project. We would quickly make a piece. We would arrange the furniture we needed, get the costumes we needed. Each piece was articulated and designed by one of the ensemble members, and then we would take it all down and jump into a completely different process the following week. And you can see these pictures really testify to just how much variation I think there is in these different short films, which we'll tell you a little bit more about later in terms of how you can view them, but we of course plan to share them all online. But this is weird for us. This is weird and this is strange, being theater makers with cameras in our hands, and sort of needing to edit and make film and video sense of things. And Jake, I wonder if maybe you could speak a little bit to some of those feelings that we had.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're all the nine of us that are together have done a lot of theater, and this is just so different. You're not stuck in one project. A lot of times you end up jumping from one project to the next, and often they overlap. And so you can go to rehearse Connor's piece, but then for the 2 hours before Connor's rehearsal, you were in Matt's rehearsal, which was a completely different piece. But there is a thing of, we really wanted to get this right by the people that we'd spoken to and the people that we'd met and the people that so many of us had befriended. And there's something about theater where you want to get it right. Of course, you want to get it right. But film lasts. Theater, the curtains come down. This is going to stay for a while. And so just being able to take it that seriously and knowing what was at stake, secretly, there's a bunch of benefits of filming over doing it in theater. Because when you're an actor, if you're walking on for a scene, you have to be aware that, okay, in 20 minutes, I have to cry because my mom is going to walk out the room. But right now I'm happy, but I've got to keep that sadness bubbling underneath so I have access to it in 20 minutes. In film, that's not really a problem. I just have to cry now and we just have to catch it once and have to get it right once, and that's it. We're done. I don't have to worry about the month-long run. I've got to get it right for 5 minutes and it's cut, print, we're moving on to the next. The drawback of that is where we are right now, which is as of about an hour ago, we just finished watching our first rough cut of the entire thing, and we got our notes, and we're going back into the process. So the problem with the curtains not coming down is it hasn't really finished. We still have this illusion of control right now. So we're not ready to let go of it, and we keep editing. And all of us were just taught how to edit about a year ago. And so understanding how much control you have in this process is exciting, it's daunting, but it's just really different.
Yeah, I can't compliment the students enough on how fully and willingly they have kind of leaped into a sandbox that is like a totally new sandbox with a lot of different and unfamiliar toys in there. It's all powerful stuff. We've been really fortunate to be supported by others in our department who can loan us this equipment. Other colleagues with their expertise we've depended on, and we're grateful for that. But it has been very new for us, but that's been exciting.
Jump in, Tom?
Yeah, Kylie, go ahead.
Should I?
Yeah.
I guess the last thought is also through all of the twists and the turns and the different kinds of iterations that we've had with this project. The goal has always remained the same, which is to destigmatize this disease, because we understand that it's quite nuanced. And the intent is not to glamorize or to sugarcoat or propose some sort of grand solution, because we don't have that. Nobody has that. So, but people have ideas. And the only way that we could bring those ideas to action is to continue the conversation. And that's what we're trying to do, this like radical act of talking about a stigmatized thing. I was talking to the cohort earlier about how we feel like art really gets to decide what it is that we value and what it is that we talk about. It's like a way of screaming for society to look at this part that's hurting. So yeah, it was important for us to put this on stage, this thing that's constantly hidden.
Yeah, I think sometimes as artists, we feel our limitations in a conversation like this, we're sort of aware that we aren't scientists maybe, or that we aren't doctors as we confront something that is on some level a medical problem. But I was always struck throughout all of our workshops and all of our time in the field by how excited the folks we met were about the fact that we were artists. that somehow I think our journey in this project has been, as the project has taken different forms and shapes, to remember that idea of destigmatization, and to just actively meditate each day on how art can really support that mission. I think in a way that sometimes we don't always realize, or maybe even give ourselves enough credit for. I think it's been an opportunity for us to try to come to terms with that as we work on serving it to the best of our abilities. And so what we find ourselves with here, as Jake says, looking at the project coming together, we find ourselves with this truly hybrid art project that is really different than we thought it would be in January, but is something that we think still has the potential for impact. It's this film-based theater performance project with movement and live music. Kylie's piece has amazing music that she's made. It's so many things, and it's really multidisciplinary. And I guess I'm struck by how it's actually reflective of our department's recent name change. We are now the Department of Theater, Film, and Media Arts. And it's also reflective of and embodies the interdisciplinary spirit at the hearts of OSU's Arts District, which is a major project on campus right now and is uniting all of OSU's academic arts programs in the middle of campus. And in fact, our department is soon going to have a new world-class facility in the Arts District, which we're really excited about. And I could talk about all day how excited I am about that. Apparently, I'm now going to get a window in my office, which is sort of incredibly exciting. But since our buildings are first and foremost for our students, I would actually love to hear from you all a bit about what you see as the benefits of this new building. I think it's like an opportunity to actually just say something about that. So as current graduate students, how do you think a new high-profile facility like this in the heart of the Arts District is going to help us do things like this and do what we do?
Yeah, I've got an answer for that. I feel like this department is already a community of people who gravitate towards multiplicity, being interdisciplinary. We like using many materials. We like learning. We like knowing that we don't know everything. And our program specifically is focused on devising, essentially collective creation as well. And we've already been collaborating. Like right now I'm working with some dance MFAs, but the thing is that it's been kind of difficult to create these cross-disciplinary projects because we are so geographically separated. We don't walk the same earth at the same time. So we can't use each other's facilities and we don't know that much about each other's coursework. It's been up to us to sort of poke around the dance department, music, visual arts, and we have, which is great, but to have a facility within the art district would really give official permission to the theater makers here to just go and collaborate, expand their world. And how can virtual reality or visual art find its way into your play in like a more intentional way? how can we more effectively tell stories together? Yeah, I think geographically bringing us together would just provide a lot of opportunity. I'd be so excited for it.
Yeah, Kylie, I think the incorporation, the recent incorporation of media arts into the department's title and mission really pretty exciting, and will only be supported by the state of the art equipment and everything that's going into that new facility. There's something really special about teaching on and being taught in a facility that is really new and incorporates all the latest technologies, like I understand that this building intends to.
Yeah, I would totally add to that. This new building, it's going to have increased visibility for our performances and our entire department. Like, I know when I'm teaching our Intro to Theater 2100 class, there's a section where we take our students on a tour of the Drake building and show them the inside of the theater behind, the stage and what the costume shop looks like. And a lot of my students won't even know like where the Drake building is because it's so far away behind the stadium. Not many people walk back there. It's really disconnected from the rest of campus. So I think having this near High Street in the Arts District is really a great opportunity for us to be seen and showcase all of the wonderful work that we're doing.
Yeah, building off of that, the current building is beautiful, and it's very nice because sometimes you can look out the window and you can see deer grazing, and it's right next to the Olentangy. But if you are not a deer, it is a little out of the way, and there's something to it just being located a little closer into the rest of campus. I'm the current president of the South Asian Theater Alliance, and we have a lot of students who are not, we have people part of it who aren't South Asian, but they're all not really involved in theater, and not too many of them know about the theater department, which is crazy because theater is great for theater majors, but theater is great for everybody. We educate people on how to breathe, how to relax, a better way to navigate life. This would be incredibly useful for business majors and everyone else. And so I think something about just us being more aware and more present on campus really helps with recruiting, really helps with bringing us to more people's attention.
Yeah. Thanks for that point, Jake. I mean, that's really the spirit of this entire project as well, right? Is somehow combining theater with the rest of the world. I mean, this project, in whatever form it takes, is really about looking at the community, looking at the world around you, looking at people doing other things, and just asking how mixing in some theater can perhaps create a really interesting collision of sorts. And so our ability to be in the middle of campus like that, I think is just a really wonderful opportunity for us and for theater, film, and media arts. That is the end of the material that we brought for today, but we do have a few minutes here, about 10 minutes set aside for some questions that have come in from our audience as this event has unfolded. I should say here at the get-go, just sort of apologize in advance if we're not able to answer everyone's question. We've had several interesting questions come in, so we'll do our best here to get through as many as we can in the time that we have. I'll throw these all out to you all. Okay, guys, you can start for sure. We have a question here. I'm sure you have all been involved in thinking differently about what you are doing. I'm curious to hear some of the more out of the box ideas that you have thrown around. Maybe the question is getting at ideas around our project, but maybe also ideas in your own creative lives about how you're sort of remaining active and creative in this time.
I can take that, especially because that is Sean's mom. Hi, Karen. Hello, Mrs. Brennan. The thing is, the coolest thing about this is we get to work with people everywhere. We get to work with people all over the country, all over the world on different spots. And so that's one actually really incredible thing Zoom Theater has allowed. You aren't forced to get out of the box. You're invited to pretty consistently. And we're theater makers that are making a lot of film right now, which is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I would add to that, Jake, that something that we discovered early on. I think we've all done a couple like little Zoom theater pieces at one point or another, trying to like make this world work and this frame contain a story. It's just very different, and we've spoken to that. Something that I've found oddly is that what's really working in this very technological space is actually low tech solutions, things like shadow puppets and things like I did a thing with over the summer for a small play festival with a bunch of sock puppets that I directed, and you know, I think people want to see you still solving problems up on the stage, even if the stage is just this frame, and being suggestive. You know, I think, you know, instead of like putting a Zoom background up of a forest, maybe just like a little paper cutout of a tree is enough to suggest it. And that's theater trying to talk into this technological realm we suddenly find ourselves in.
I feel like maybe I could jump on this too, that if you're not doing Zoom theater, like in the process of this project, I feel like we've had to really trust each other more than maybe you would have to in a structure that's already been set up. We need to trust each other that we're remaining safe and that we're going to follow the guidelines and we're going to find a proper way to do the thing that we're doing. And a member of our cohort, Erin, and I were driving around to find, in Hilliard, Ohio, to find a place, like an open space to film something where we could all be 10 feet apart with masks off. And we stumbled on a field that we wanted to use. It was safe and we didn't know if anyone owned it. And there was a house on that field. So we walked up and knocked on the door and then stood back because we're in a pandemic and met a lovely person who's allowing us to use his land for our films. And while it doesn't have anything to do with Zoom theater, it's sort of like this situation has forced us to sort of like make different relationships and like think outside of all of these boxes that we've set up of what's allowed in a like creative process. And that was just like a wonderful surprise. And a lot of us have filmed on his property. He's a wonderful person.
A quick question that just came in, which is reminding me of something to mention. How will we be able to see this work? Thank you for that question. We should absolutely mention that a link, we will provide some information to all the viewers of this webinar. We'll provide some further information about where you'll be able to see this. You'll be able to, we expect that it will go live February 1st. We expect that you'll be able to access it through the Department of Theater's website. And we also have a website for the project that we have built, that all of the students have built as part of the work of the project. And we'll provide a link for that as well in the materials we send out after this webinar. But February 1st is the time when you will be able to see them online. Let's see, we've got time for maybe one or two more. A question. I'm curious about what seems to be two approaches to theater emerging in the COVID context, the virtual and the filmic, like Zoom staged readings, or the open air and site specific, like the MFA dance piece. Do you all have a sense of which of those two which one you're more drawn to? Do you find yourself more empowered by one or the other?
I'm just going to jump in here. Zoom theater is awful. I'm sorry. It's great, but I've never seen anything through Zoom theater which wouldn't have just been better on actual theater. So this is something that when actually filming things, that's incredible. Zoom theater is us making lemonade out of the lemons that we have, and blessings to everybody that's doing it, and hats off, you're fighting the good fight, but let's leave it behind as quickly as possible.
Thought about Zoom theater as it kind of came into vogue over the summer as people were coping with this pandemic. And Jake, I'd have to agree with you. Like, you know, it's hard to watch theater over Zoom. It's hard to participate in theater over Zoom. It's difficult, but I think at the end of the day, it's an expression of grieving what isn't there anymore so suddenly, and grieving and responding somehow to you know, what we've lost and what we're trying to work back toward, and you know, in a very human way, moving the ball forward in our own creative explorations. And yeah, so I think it's both. I think it's frustrating and can be frustrating to watch, but at the same time, like we're doing right now, we're sort of gathering as community to talk about what's possible.
Those are two really nice answers, guys, because I think they get at this inherent tension we feel that on the one hand, Zoom is so limited, like you say, Jake, right? It's not film, it's not edited. It doesn't feel to us like a slick video or film piece. And that's unsatisfying to us if we compare it to other film video work that we watch. But it also has baked into it this kind of acknowledgement, like you say, Sean, of what we're up against. It's somehow to watch a piece on Zoom is a bit communal, because it's like we realize that this is the way the world is existing right now. And, you know, as theater is always a reflection of where we are in any given time, there's an authenticity in it, in spite of its graininess and blips and all of its foibles, right? So I think you guys really articulate sort of the two sides of the argument really well there. We are, alas, at 5 o'clock. This is as long as we can go. So I just want to thank everybody quickly for being here. I want to thank the students so very, very much who have given voice to everything here much more articulately than I know I could have by myself. So thank you so very much. Thank you everybody for joining us for this conversation, which we hope has been inspiring, not just in terms of this project and the good that it could do around this important issue, but also art and creativity in this challenging time we face. I think creativity is an antidote to a lot of what we feel right now. So I hope in our own way, we will all continue to keep making things. Thank you very much.